Hey everyone, welcome to Heart of the Matter with Sonia Hartle. We're broadcasting from WYTV 7 out of Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm so happy to be in Nashville this evening with my good friend. He's going to be sharing a very special story this evening. And I always want to take time to say thank you to our listeners and for being a part of our broadcast as we get started tonight. I've actually got a title. I want to shout out to Pastor David. Well, he was talking about Bible school yesterday, and I felt like it just gave us the perfect title to talk about Jeff's story tonight. And it's called Superheroes of Faith. And I don't know about you, but we all have heroes in our life, whether it be moms, dads, brothers, sisters, friends. And I want to introduce my friend Jeff Green. He's actually, I would call him one of my superheroes.
Oh,
I met Jeff several years ago, and I was actually had a broken leg and was getting out of my car at work trying to figure out how I was going to maneuver my backpack, all of my things for work, and my crutches. And about that time, it was like Superman just appeared, and he grabbed my bag and helped me inside. And I didn't know who he was, but found out later. As I would get there each morning, he would be there, and I was like, "How does this guy know, when to be here to help me?" And later, a couple years later, when we happened to be working together on a job out in the field, he said, Sonia, he said, I tried to think about what time you would get there. So little beknownst to me, he was actually my hero waiting to help me inside each day. So I want to thank him for that. And just happy to introduce my superhero friend, Jeff Green, tonight. And so, Jeff, would you share just a little bit about yourself as we get started?
well, Sonia, thank you for letting me to be here with you. I do benefit enrollments and education, and not only do I do it here locally, but I travel with several companies, and I work in major corporations, and I help them with their understanding of their benefits and how they best fit together for their employees. And I also do individual work for business owners and help them to build their retirement and place a retirement plan together. And so I'm all about understanding how things work and the truth of it. And I've started doing a live video on Facebook because of all this, and it's called The Benefit Of, and it may be the benefit of this particular insurance product or the benefit of knowing how essential oils work. And I'll have different people on my live event just talking about the benefit of.
That's great. That is great. Now, as I mentioned, Jeff is here to share a very special story. And probably about 6 to 8 months ago, Jeff was on a special assignment with what he would call the strongest woman he knows. And so she would be a superhero in his book. And so, Jeff, would you share a little bit about your friend, your superhero?
Well, about 4.5 years ago, and even further time back than that, but I had gone through a serious relationship breakup, and I was struggling, and it's hard to go through those things yourself. I met a guy, his name is Tom, and he introduced me. He said, "Man, you're a mess. You need to meet Roxana," and my Sunday school teacher. And at the church where we went, she had one of the largest Sunday school classes and had it for many, many years. So she had mentored many people and brought a lot of people into the fold because of who she was. And so I went by Tom and I both went by to meet her one day, and I said, well, I guess I'm probably going to be her project, for the next year or so. But I met, it's probably 4.5 years ago that I met her, Roxana, and she has a prom and pageant shop out in Hendersonville, Tennessee. And she's known for states and states away because of all the girls going to prom, and how crazy the mothers get about it. I remember you did the same thing.
I did.
And so I just go by occasionally and visit with her and saying hello. And one day I said, Roxana, what did you used to do before you did the prom and pageant business? She said, I was in the kids business. I had a kids shop. And in my before life, I was in the clothing business, and I manufactured and designed for major department stores across the country. And also, before I was in that part of it, I was in the children's business. And I said, "Did you ever go to any of the local the local shows?" And she said, "Yeah, I did." And I said, "Oh, wait a minute. Turn sideways." And she turned sideways, And I said, "Now stick your nose up in the air." And she did that. And I said, "I remember you." And she said, "What?" And I explained that I remember seeing her at that show. I never knew her name. I never was introduced to her, but I never forget a face. And I recognized her from that show from many years ago. And then so we started talking about the clothing business, and we just had a little friendship going there. And I'd stop by and see her every so often. So that's when I met her, about 4.5 years ago.
4.5 years ago. Well, I know as we were talking the other day, you said Roxana knew everything about me. She knew the good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah. She would just kind of analyze me, and she would say, "Well, Jeff, what's going on with you today?" And so I would kind of explain what had been happening in my life through a bad breakup. And she says, and she would tell me, "Now, you're not supposed to be doing that, or you're not supposed to be doing this," and like a good Sunday school teacher would do. And so I just kind of felt like I was her project. And so she knew all the good, bad, and indifferent on me, and she kept she'd keep welcoming me in, and says, "Well, I'll talk to you later." Like it was like no matter how bad it was, she would always welcome me back in and see how I'm doing and checking on me and making sure I was doing okay. And we were going to the same church, but we didn't sit. We kind of sat in the same section, but we never sat by each other. And I started hanging out with her and some of her friends there at church. And now we even went to a few Bible studies together. And so we were just strictly friends,
Absolutely.
But she knew all the stuff on me.
She knew the dirt.
And she still was my friend.
She still was your friend.
Yeah.
Well, I know we were talking a little earlier today, and you said there kind of came a point where you kind of got out of the friend category. You kind of got out of the box in the friend category to a different level with your relationship with Roxana.
Well, when we were friends there, and it was about a year of friendship. Soon after I met her, she started having some health issues, and so she went in and she told me one day that they found a tumor in her abdomen area, and she was going in for that, and so she had surgery, and she was going to be out of circulation for a few months. She had some friends and family coming to stay with her. And so I didn't see her as much during that time, but I did talk to her, and I was traveling some with my business and staying busy with that, but I did stay in touch with her by phone. And when she got back on her feet, and I was going and visiting with her some at the store, and excuse me, we had started spending a little bit more time together. And this was real funny, Sonia. One day, I walked into the store, and one of her, I said she had Palm and Pageant, and she also rented tuxedos. And one of the ladies was hemming a pair of pants, and she says, "Oh, I just can't get this done." And I said, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm hemming these pants, and I can't get them right." And I said, "You want me to help you with that?" And she said, "You know how to hem pants?" I said, "Yeah." And Roxana said, "You know how to hem pants?"
You were in.
I said, "Yeah." I said, "Is that all it took, And so that really changed the dimension, because I could help her do some more things in the store. I do alterations to some degree. I'm not great at it, but I'm a good Band-Aid. And so we started hanging out a little bit more and a little bit more. And she said, "I need to pay you for this." And I said, "No, I don't. You don't need to pay me." She said, "Well, let me at least buy your dinner." And so it kind of started. It started there. And one day, Roxana started acting really kind of funny, and I'd already decided that I enjoyed hanging out with her than anybody else. So I was not hanging out with anybody.
I remember when you told me that.
Yeah.
I remember that day.
And she was just acting real funny that day, and it was the end of day. It's time to close the store. And she said, well, let's go and let's go get something to eat, or let's go over to my house. And I said, no, I need you to tell me what's going on. She said, no, let's go. And I said, no. And I locked the front door of her store. And I said, we're not going anywhere. Do you tell me what's going on? I know something's not right, and you need to tell me, you know, if there's anything I can do to help. And Sonia, she started crying.
Oh.
And she said, Jeff, I'm beginning to have feelings for you. And I said, really? And she said, yes. And I said, well, Roxanna, I think I have feelings for you too. And so she started really crying more. And I said, what is it that bad to have feelings for me that you're crying? And she says, no. And this is the kind of woman that she was. She said, I don't want anything to come between me and Jesus. And I wouldn't want this relationship to come between me and Jesus. And I said, I won't let that happen. If I see that starts happening, I'll just back out. I said, it's not worth it to do that.
What faith and what love for Jesus.
Yeah. She had not dated anybody in 10 years. And she was such a woman of faith. And she's intimidating to a lot of people, you know. So it was kind of like, oh, when she walked in, you know, you hear the angels singing and everything.
And somehow you got through those walls that she had built. And I would bet that it's probably your sense of humor, because Jeff is like one of the funniest guys you will ever meet. He will never leave you without a laugh. And, you know, I just remember some of the things that he shared with me about how she laughed.
Oh,
and
God.
Just, you know, you might tell something there. Hey, I know you've told some pretty funny stories over the years too.
Well, I'm a little edgy. You know, she's all smooth and cool and way up here, and I'm a little bit of sandpaper. But I would embarrass her sometimes by some of my comments. But the flash thing, I tell her.
I think that'll be fine.
Okay. One night, she had asked me, she said, this young man that was in my Sunday school class, he can't drive, but he's working a few miles away from here, and he wondered if I would come by and visit with him tonight. And she said, I'm just really tired. Do you mind driving me? And I said, okay. And we were on our way up there, and somehow on her phone, it changed from ring to flash, you know, flash to ring.
The light. And
she had her ring, the phone laying in her lap, and it was pitch dark, and all of a sudden her phone went off, and of course it just lit up the car, and I'm seeing spots, you know, and I'm trying to keep it on the road, and I said, and she turned it over or turned it off, and I said, wait, did you just flash me? And she just came undone. It was hilarious.
She was so proper.
Yeah.
And I bet that really embarrassed. I bet her, even
did.
though it was dark, I bet her face turned about 10 shades of red. Yes,
yeah.
It lit up the car even more. So.
But she was okay with that. You know, she said, you just need to be real careful with that. People might misunderstand, you know.
Absolutely. Now, I know that you had mentioned that you both became closer as you were in a very intense Bible study. That it really strengthened your faith and brought you even closer together as far as being in Christ and just learning more about her.
Yeah. I just want to, about after she had her surgery, and she kind of got back on her feet there, and that's when we started spending more time together. And as a great woman of faith that she is, and she was so excited that her numbers from her cancer were going to be good. She's been totally healed and delivered from that. Awesome. She called me one day and she was crying, and I said, what's wrong? And she said, I got a report that wasn't good. And so I went over and I took her card and I got her some flowers, and she told me about it, and we cried together. And we prayed together about it, and we're just going to have faith and move on. We're going to believe past it. And she told me, she said, tonight, I want you to go home, and I don't want you to come back. And I said, why? She said, this may not end well for you. I said, Roxana, I am not leaving you. I'm not leaving my wingman. We're going to walk through this together. No matter if it's 3 years or 30 years, we're going to do this together. And she insisted, and I insisted, and I won out because I cooked, and I would cook for her, and I hemmed pants, So it was soon after that she started chemo again, and she took the regular chemo, 2 different treatments, and then she started on some experimental things at Sarah Cannon. And during that time, we were really seeking the Lord, and we were really looking for that next level of power and next level of miracles and walking by faith. And we started going to a high level Bible study. And I tell you, it changed my life, and it made me hungry for the things of God that I've never paid attention to before. And when we talk about God has things for us in the secret places, I want to know where those secret places are. And I want to find out where that is. And we walked together through those classes. And even though I was traveling and gone some, she was going to those classes, and she'd share with me about this and about how it was working and how she believed and what she was learning through this Bible study. And we did that a long time together. And so it came to the point to where, we decided we liked each other. I remember events. I don't remember exactly timelines, but it is that we were kind of in the hand-holding phase, and that was kind of weird. Like we'd been buddies, and all of a sudden we're kind of holding hands, and we decided that that's all it ever could be, because it was so important for us to honor God in what we were doing, because we were asking for a miracle, and I didn't want to mess that up by being stupid and doing something that He's asked us not to do. And so we stayed in that holding hands era through the very end. We loved each other. We spent a lot of time together, and she was so sweet. And I learned a lot about our relationship after she left, after she was gone, about her friends telling me about things that she'd said about our relationship. I didn't know.
Wow. And that kind of goes back to our theme, superheroes and faith. And of course, to me, the ultimate superhero is Jesus, God.
Yeah.
And so even though you didn't know it, and you've told me, she was the strongest woman that you had ever met. So, she would be like your superhero. I think you were that to her as well.
Yeah.
And so you both really strengthened your relationship at a time when you both needed. It's amazing how God's timing is perfect. And so when people go through things like this, He sent you just at the right time. Yeah. And, we talked about a little earlier on a special assignment.
Yeah.
And, you talked about her journey. And so what would you feel like was the next step on that journey as you moved through that time period in your life?
Well, we had faith and I had the faith to the very last breath that she took, that she could be supernaturally healed and get up off that bed. And believe me, I stood there and was waiting for that to happen. Our plans, what we plan and what God plans sometimes aren't the same. And as the years rolled on, this was about a 3-year journey with this chemo. She started losing a lot of weight. And I think I told you she hadn't had any food in 6 months. It was, I can't miss a meal. And it was such a hard thing. And I was so upset. And I talked to the doctor. I said, the chemo's killing her, the cancer's killing her, and now she's starving to death. And it was so intense in those last days. And I remember her telling me, she said, Jeff, you need to really be careful what you pray for. And I said, what do you mean? She said, when you pray to God for whatever it takes, And I said, are you thinking this is one of your prayers, what you're going through for somebody else? She says, it very well could be. She says, you know, I hope that so many people come to know him through this. This woman got out of the boat and walked on the water every day. It was the most amazing thing that I've ever seen in my life. She would take her chemo, and normally people are in bed for days and days and days, and she just get up and go on to work. And I've never seen anything like that. And the people at Sarah Cannon Treatment Center, you know, I still communicate with them today. I communicated with some of them, and I told them that how much I loved them and appreciated them for what they did for her. And I go through there to see them. And it's hard to do that. It's so hard to go back to those areas. And but through the last days of Roxana in the last month or so, we have to come to a reality. You know, what's the most important things? And I'd ask her, Roxana, what are you most concerned about? She said, well, I'm concerned about my children. And we prayed over her children. They're just great. She just has some great kids, and we prayed over them, and she wanted to talk to them, and she talked to them. And I said, how do you feel about it now? She says, I feel better. And you know, she was concerned about some other family members, her parents. They were older and they're well into their 80s, and she was concerned about them. And I said, do you worry about me? She said, Lord, no, you'll be fine. So going into those last days, I could tell that she's getting weaker and weaker every day, and it's getting time for me to go on the road again. And I had a training down in Atlanta on a Tuesday. I took her to the doctor, and they said that her levels were so off that they needed to keep her. So they admitted her to the hospital, and on Wednesday night I left to go down for my training down in Atlanta on a Thursday and a Friday. And I had riding down the interstate to Atlanta, I called to see how she's doing, and she's talking to me, and I said, oh my goodness. She said, what? I said, I just realized I forgot my dress shoes. Oh my. And she says, well, pull over in one of those little, you know, shops and get you a pair. So I stopped at a little outlet mall that she liked shopping at, and I found a pair, and I said, oh man, I don't like them. They're square-toed. They're for young guys. I'll wear loafers, you know. So she said, you'll be fine. She says, I want to see them when you get back. And so I did my training, and I left on a Friday. She's supposed to meet with the doctor Friday. They're in the hospital. And on the way back, I had called, and she didn't feel like talking. So one of her neighbors was there, and she told me, she said, Jeff, she'll just talk to you when you get here. Well, I didn't like that, and because I felt like something was up. And so I rolled into Nashville at the Sarah Cannon Hospital about 12:30 that Friday night. And I walked into her room, and she's just so frail laying there, and she had her little cap on, you know, because she had lost all of her hair. And she says, come here, help me up. And I set her up on the side of the bed, and she says, let me see your shoes.
Oh my goodness, she was worried about your shoes.
She said, I really like those. Yeah, I mean, she's sick, and I'm sensing that a big decision has been made about something, and she wants to see my shoes. And so I pulled up a chair to the side of the bed, and our knees are touching, and we're holding hands. And she said, they're calling in hospice. And she says, what do you think about that? And of course, I started to cry. And I said, I'm so disappointed. And she said, in what? I said, I'm not disappointed in God, because how can I be disappointed in him? This has nothing to do with him. I said, I'm disappointed for what we're not going to have that we had hoped for our future. We wanted to do a ministry together. We wanted to teach couples how to have a great relationship like what we had. And I was just so disappointed. in that, and I had to leave that Sunday night to go out on the road for my work, and on Tuesday night or Wednesday morning, I got a text saying that she had to go into, they were going to do hospice at her house, but they were going to go into, they took her into the facility here in Nashville. And I called on Thursday morning. They told me that she was totally unconscious because of the morphine. I don't know how she talked to me. There was no one else in the room with her. And she answered the phone when I called. I don't know how that happened. But, and all she could say is, it won't be long. It won't be long. And I said, I get off Friday and I'll come in Friday night. And I stayed. And I stayed with her, and her family was there, and I stayed until she had passed away. But let me say this: on Monday night, I told her family, I said, I'm here to stay. I know you guys are tired. If you want me to stay, I will tonight. I'll sit with her tonight. And they said yes. And so I said, well, girl, looks like we have date night tonight. And so I put on some music that she loved to hear. And one of them was a song that she told me that she wanted played at her funeral. And it was Give Me Jesus. And I played that, and I prayed over her and prayed over her and held her hand and prayed over her. And I had told her that Saturday, and this was on a Monday night, but I told her on Saturday, I said, you made us promise that you'd always have red lipstick on. And I said, you wouldn't be happy to know. Now, she can't move because she's under morphine. And said, you would be so upset if you knew you don't have a lick of lipstick on. And she winced her eyes like that. She squinched up. And I looked at her daughter. I said, Hannah, did you see that? She said, I sure did. I said, that wasn't coincidence. And she hears what we're saying. But that next morning, they came in to check on her, and her breathing got interrupted. And I was standing there with her when she took her last breath, and believing just any minute that she was coming off that bed.
That is such a hard time.
Yeah.
And I've been at that place with friends of mine, and so I know exactly what you're talking about when we go through things like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, Roxanne, Jeff has shared so much with me about this lady, and again, you know, that she just was so strong. And one of the things that he talked to me about was after the service, how just lost you felt. And I think that we all experience that. And just recently, I've lost a very close friend of mine. And I know that his family is dealing with that very thing right now because it's new, it's fresh, and we just feel lost. We want to pick up the phone and call, and we expect them to be there. And sometimes that can be very emotional, and things that we're not expecting can jar us.
Yeah.
And I can remember when my mother passed away. I got through the service. I was trying to help everybody else, so I was focused on that. And it had been about a month and a half. And my mother always helped get my kids school supplies.
Oh, yeah.
And so we walk into Walmart, we're going to get school supplies, and there are the backpacks. And I just broke down in the aisle at Walmart because it just brought back that emotion so quick that you think is healed.
Yeah.
And so I know you shared some of that on Facebook Live. That was one of the things that made me reach out, that you were talking about being in the field and being in the hospital. So would you just kind of share that a little bit here? That was such an incredible story when you talked about that emotion on Facebook.
When I went home to my apartment after the funeral, and I just sat there, no TV on. I didn't talk to anybody. I just sat there for days, and I didn't leave the house for a few weeks. I had a job. They called me back out in the field after a couple of weeks, and I went out and worked for another couple of weeks on the road, and I came back in. And always when I would land in Nashville Airport, when I'd be getting my car, I would call her and say, I'm coming up to your house. Do you need me to pick anything up for you? And I picked up the phone and I'm calling her, and then I stopped and I said, I won't ever do that again. And that just really kind of put me in a tailspin. And I stayed another couple of weeks in the apartment. I just talked to my immediate family and maybe a friend or two, but I didn't talk to anybody. I wouldn't even answer my phone, and got a lot of text messages. But I met with her friend, Pastor Jack, and Jack and Sheila Harper. And Jack, we had coffee together one day, and he kind of helped bring some things in perspective to me that was so hard for me to swallow. And you talked about this earlier. He said, Jeff, I just want to tell you, buddy. He said, Roxana was your assignment for the last 3 years, and your job was to take care of her, and now your job's over. And I said, well, that's easy to say, but I'm left with all those feelings, you know, of loss and hopelessness and all this, and because that's who we are, we have to work through that. And after another week or so of just being all messed up, I took my own advice from my benefit of, you know, we always ask everybody, have you been to get your annual wellness visit? So I called my doctor, and I called one of the ministers of my church, and I set up a time to go talk to them. And so I had my annual physical, which he says, other than you being crazy, you're fine. And I went to see the minister, and he said, Jeff, I want you to think about this group called griefshare.org. And we had one of the programs going at our church. And I went there to that, and in the first night I was there, it just made a difference in my life, just being in there. Believe it or not, I didn't say a word. I just listened to everyone else and listened to the videos and what they were talking about. I was there 3 weeks before I ever said anything. I know you don't believe that, but I was taking it all in.
Yes.
And
just wanted to absorb.
Yeah, I wanted to kind of place out my emotions in there and kind of see what other people are going through and how I identified with them. And one of my dear friends at church had passed away, and this is one of the things that really sent me. After I sang at his funeral, and after his funeral, I just broke down, and I mean, it was just too much. And so being in that group, one of my good friends at church, his son was in there. And the night that I did speak about things, I talked about how great his father was, because he was a great friend to me. And someone had lost a child in there, and husbands and sisters and family members. And so I learned so much in those couple of meetings in there, and I had a workbook. I did a benefit of griefshare.org, and I just kind of talked about that, and we're going to share at the end how you can see that video. And I reached out to GriefShare, and they posted it on their website, and I've had a little over 5,000 views from that. I was hoping that maybe 10 people would see it and would help somebody, but I've had over 5,000, and I think that's incredible for just a little old guy like me.
I do too. And you know, Jeff, I know your heart is like mine, and you know, tonight I just want to make sure that we honor Roxana and being a superhero that she was, and my friend Jeff Green. And like I said, there's so many people in my life that I call a superhero. And again, you know, Jesus is the ultimate, but I want you to realize that you're someone's superhero, whether you realize it or not. It might be your child, it might be your spouse, it might even be mother, father, or a coworker. But people are watching you, and when you reach out to help someone, you may not even realize what you become to them. So know that you're all superheroes of faith. And I just want to encourage you to strengthen your faith, read the word. If you have prayer requests, again, I always want you to know that you can reach me at Heart of the Matter, WYTV7@gmail.com. You can message on Facebook. And Jeff, what I'd like to do also is have you share, if you know the website for griefshare.org.
Yes. GriefShare is griefshare.org. You run it all together, and it's GRIEFSHARE.org. And once you go to that site, there is you'll see a little bar there to look up for a group, find a group in your area. You put your zip code in, and you'll see if there's one in your area. It'll tell you the different places at different times. And if there's not anything in your area, I also have a phone number for you to call that will help you to find out more about that. Maybe they can point you to something or help get a group started in that area. And maybe you're interested in having something like this at your church. Well, you can call Grief Share, and they can help set that up for you. And their number is 800-395-5755, 800-395-5755, and it's on their website too under Contact Them. But go in there and see if there's something. If you've had if you lost somebody in your life, nobody knows what you're going through except someone who's lost someone in their life, and you find a common ground there. A buddy of mine messaged me the other day. He told me, he said, "Jeff, I've been watching you on these Grief Share. I lost my mother about Grief Share. I've lost my mother a couple of years ago." And he says, "I've just struggled with that, but me and God's going to get through it." And I told him, I said, this organization has people just like you telling their story about what they've gone through, and then and showing you where the next step should be. What I said in my video was that it teaches me where the boogerman are, all the boogeyman. You know, you don't want to be scared or be all caught up in this. And so it tells you where it is and tells you the next step and how to find peace in your mourning. And so I said, here's the rope. And it was like a lifeline to me. I was drowning out in the middle of a lake, and all my friends and all the ministers were standing up on the bank, and they're saying, "You'll be fine. You just need some time. You'll be fine." But I'm drowning, and I needed a lifeline. And to me, they threw me a lifeline that I could pull myself out. They're not pulling me out. They're just showing me how to get back to the bank so I can find the new normal in my life. It won't ever be the same.
That's a great story, Jeff. And thank you so much for your time this evening and for sharing to help others. And again, I want to thank all of you for being a part of the broadcast tonight. And this is Sonia Hartle with Heart of the Matter from Jeff Green, my superhero friend. We hope you have a favored and blessed evening. Thank you.